Okay.
Okay. So, John, tell me a little bit about your role. Tell me a little bit about Great Minds and your role there, and then kind of take me back to the day when you were first aware that, you needed something like a more dynamic approach to org charts and such.
The quickest possible version of who Great Minds is, we started out as a nonprofit 10 years ago. The first 6 years, a lot of smart people doing a lot of hard work in building better curricula for the K through 12 market, culminated in New York State adopting our Engage New York, better known now as Eureka Math curriculum, statewide K through 12 4.5 years ago, which has become the highest rated math curriculum K through 12 in the United States.
Wow, that's excellent.
Kids are actually learning math conceptually.
How about that?
So
I have an 8-year-old daughter. I have an 8-year-old daughter who is just now discovering her love for math in a way that I never did. So we're in Pennsylvania.
We have greatly impacted that revolution in how math is taught in schools, and we're already, again, in those 4.5 years, we're the most widely utilized math curriculum K through 12 as well. With that, we've also, we're no longer grant-based. We've built an LLC underneath that nonprofit to better compete in the educational publishing field. We put out our humanities curriculum with wisdom that Ed reports over the summer, came out with nearly perfect scores for wit and wisdom. We've got our science team building our science curriculum right now. So ultimately, we write the best curricula in the K through 12 space. That's what we do.
Okay.
And for us, again, we've grown tremendously in the last 4 years. Went from those 10 employees to 250. We'll add another 125 positions this year. So with that, again, all of our systems had to grow up very fast and have changed often as we've gone through that rapid growth to accommodate just the new realities. We'll outgrow systems in 2 to 3 months over the last 2 or 3 years. 2 years in particular, that's happened a lot with all of our systems. As the org chart was one of those things where when you need it, you kind of need it, and some people like it as a reference, and there's a million reasons for one. I'm sure you're aware. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we had someone who was very good at doing the PowerPoint org chart stuff, and she liked doing it. So somebody was doing it, so it was done. So we didn't care. That person kind of left, and so then the rest of us were like, "Wow, this is a real pain in that." Right. And so it was like, okay, we've got to, I'm not doing that. So if somebody else is going to do it, let's do something that's functional and works better. So, for me, it's one of those things. If I'm going to be using it, I'm going to find what I like, and I'm not a completely picky shopper, but price always plays a factor in things, and
sure.
For me, it's always, I spent years in a role where I did a lot of purchasing and things, and so I would always take the approach of, well, I want something that's better than I'm using now that costs less than I'm using now, and you don't always find that.
No,
when I take that approach,
benchmark. Yeah, that's
when I take that approach, maybe I find something that's less that I like the same that I have. Maybe I find something that's a little bit more, but a lot better functionality. So I think when I take that approach, I usually can find something that at least works and is workable. And so. For us, Pingboard was the one that I kind of, I played around with 3 or 4 after I narrowed it down to that number. And Pingboard, again, the thing that I've learned in the software adoptions that I've been a part of that again relate to HR and performance management, recruiting, and all those things, etc., are that I look for organizations that have the right kind of response in terms of they know they're fairly young in the marketplace. Taking the new approach of user experience matters, understanding that it's with a little effort, you can make something that's easy to use and very functional, and again, responsive customer service. I think that I'm someone who, if I'm going to pay a little more for something, I don't mind if it's on the service side where I have really genuinely good support. That matters a ton, and so I think those, those kind of being the things we were looking for, and those are the things that we found that then really made a very quick decision with Pingboard, mainly because the cost was such that it was like, okay, we can either keep struggling with this PowerPoint that I've instead of struggling, I've chosen to ignore it, or we can use Pingboard, which again I think would really just fit our criteria very well. So it was a pretty quick, easy decision. Yeah, I think. I can't remember the person I spoke to, Mike, or I can't think of his name right now, but he, I was probably his easiest, fastest sell because I had already done all the work myself. So when it came time for a decision, it was just like, yeah, I already know that. I've already decided this is what we want. Just need to negotiate pricing. So
okay, well, that was good. And, I have to say, you didn't find it therapeutic to draw lots of little boxes in PowerPoint. There's something like a Japanese, rock garden aspect of drawing lots and lots of little boxes and lines to connect them.
I don't mind gardening, but I don't particularly love playing around with PowerPoint. No.
John, what is your role in Great Minds? I mean, obviously you have an administrative landscape in front of you, but what is your role with the organization?
I mean, I think every job, I think people underrate the amount of administrative crap we all do.
Sure.
And then HR, that does never go away. And but I'm the HR manager. I oversee all the talent acquisition, talent management, onboarding, performance management, management training. Okay. So training and development, a lot of things.
Okay. Well, in an organization that has an educational focus, I can already imagine there's sort of an all hands on deck for the kids kind of approach, not to mention the growth you guys are experiencing. So you have a challenge ahead of you for certain. Yeah. With your kind of savvy shopper approach, you mentioned that it's something that, you generally have a way of going about finding these things. Take me a little bit into your process. Do you start with Bing? Do you start with Google? Do you start with conversations with peers? Where is it? What's your starting point to evaluate? I know you said you got there pretty quickly, but as best you can, kind of let me know what your process is.
Yeah, I think I am pretty normal in the approach of Google first, and kind of narrow down from there. Get a list, build a list. You end up on a lot of junky sites that obviously are paid to promote, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of, you've been exposed to enough of that, you can decipher through what looks real and what looks like, right. Marketing. And then again, you can usually, the best ones have readily available demos, readily available. And again, the demos are obviously marketing too, but the best ones have sandboxes and you can go in and play, and where you can, so I'll tell you what, every one of the systems we've added on this past year, whether it was the onboarding, recruiting, team board, et cetera, had a sandbox. We could go in, play, look, and build out. And we take that part seriously with, this one came together pretty quickly, but even like with the onboarding one, I mean, we went in and built it all out like we were going to use it, like before we decided we were going to buy it. I mean, with all real information to say, so that we knew exactly how it was going to function for us. And so with Pingboard, it was very quick and easy to get into and play with, and just be like, oh, okay, this is actually perfect, with a couple of little additional fun things that I think are nice. And then one of the big things with Pingboard, the reporting function, because essentially we're uploading, a CSV of data from ADP in Pingboard. That Pingboard is so much, not that it's hard to be better than ADP. I don't want to use that as a standard. That's not the standard we're going for. But the reporting function, I would just rather run the same report out of Pingboard any day of the week than even log into ADP before and dealing with their reporting function. So there were a lot of things, but again, they let us go in and play and see what it's really like.
And when you say play, you actually spent the time. I find it interesting that you went in and really, you didn't drop one or two cards in there. You built the whole thing out before you bought it to make sure it was going to function.
We didn't build it out to that extent on this particular program because it fit our criteria. The pricing was right. I could see what it could do. I could run. Once I started running the reports, I did not on this one. We did on a separate one where we wanted to be a little bit more sure because there was a lot more interaction. At the end of the day, for this, it really is as simple as an upload. It's so easy to manipulate, move and manage. The one part which I let myself get marketed a little bit on this one, because, where it's the hope. But they're in negotiations with ADP so that they'll interface with them and just automatically upload all of our data from ADP, so we never have to even do the upload. Now that is perfect. But I know that in reality, I realize that negotiating with ADP, because ADP wants all their money, will likely go on forever, and that will never happen. But
I hope that's not the case. With power players like ADP, they recognize the strength they have just from their ubiquity, but in order to stay relevant, they're going to need to play nice with others, and I think we're going to see that coming sooner than later. That's my hope.
Hope so. That'd be great. Again, that was my, when I was selling it to everybody else, that was my clinching point, that everybody was like, oh, that's going to be awesome. I'm like, yep. And I didn't say, but I don't believe that ADP, since it's ADP, we know that, they are.
Little hovering asterisks at the end of your speech that day.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So you've built it out now to what extent? How many folks do you have in there, roughly?
Oh, the way we schedule our updates, we update it every pay period, so that we're not updating it every day when changes happen. So our next update is on the 15th. But so I think the current data probably has 235 or 36 people in it from the last pay period.
Okay.
So right in there.
Are you doing any personalization of the when it comes to images and things like that?
Here's another key part of our implementation of Pingboard. Our director of HR he's pretty old school because he's pretty old.
Okay.
He knows he's old. It's okay. We can. But he's a little he likes to be careful and cautious on certain things. And because we've already added in sensitive data like salary, and there's a ton more stuff we want to add into it. When I say we, I mean me.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'd like to use the full functionality of it. I love the mobile app and the game and all that stuff. I think it's fun, and I think it's great for us. We're 75% remote. I think it's a good way to just learn people's faces that you see once or twice a year. And so I think there's a lot of plus side that it's it's purely simple. It's nothing crazy. And again, I love the reporting function out of there. So I'd rather put all that we can in there. We're still debating that out. Our agreement was that we'll figure it out by Q2 so that we can because he's still scared that if it says, even though it says private, that data will somehow be public. And I'm like, well, why are you scared of that? I mean, are you scared of that in ADP, that someone's going to log in and get access to information that I don't know. So it's a little irrational fear that we're working through. So in the meantime, we in the next month or so, we will decide what he's comfortable with us completely loading in there, whether we use it as in the best way that it's intended to use, or whether we scale it back into just, hey, let's at least have a good, easy to use, functioning org chart.
Okay. When you started that search, that the ubiquitous Google search, you mentioned there might have been 3 or 4 others that popped up?
Yeah.
Do you have any recollection of what they might have been?
First of all, I'm terrible with names, by the way. So, and that's all names.
Well, actually,
names of people.
Less important to me, truthfully, less important to me would be maybe a direct competitor name, because they'd be.
Yeah, I think one of them was just called org chart something. I can't remember, but it had good reviews, and I loved some of the functions that it had.
Okay, and that's actually what I wanted to drill into. Was there functionality that tempted you from others?
Oh, it tempted me, but then I would have to quit my job and work full time as the person managing our org chart to keep up with everything. It was just ridiculous. It was like, okay, it was like an Excel version, of an org chart in terms of learning all the functions, learning all the and they're implementing. And again, they let me play around with it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is. Well, they didn't let me play around with it first. First, they wanted to give me their demo, which took 45 minutes. And through the 45 minutes, I kept kind of trying to stop and be like, well. They just kept talking, and so I just started doing other things. And when we got to the end of the 45 minutes, I'm like, okay. I'm like, look, quite frankly, I had questions along the way, but you didn't really stop to answer them. But I see that that's because there is a ridiculous amount of information. How long does it take somebody to implement this? Right. It's like, well, it usually takes 2 months, but we charge X to help you out. And I'm like, okay, this really isn't this isn't for us. Yeah. And they kept calling. And then the regional called. What do you mean it's not for you? We're the best. And I'm like, well, I don't believe you, first of all. Second of all, you're not the best for me, so we don't really need to talk about it much further. And they kept calling and calling. I'm like, look. Again, I said no. I mean, come on. So again, they're not like us. That wouldn't fit. And I think Org Chart Pro maybe was the name.
Okay.
Something like that.
Again, yeah, more about whether there was functionality or the way that they were presenting it that caused it to stay more than a blip on your radar. And it sounds like the big piece for you at least is having that ability to evaluate on your own before somebody tries to give you 45 minutes of sales speech around it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, one of the reasons I'm giving you time is because I liked Pingboard, and I'm happy to provide time for something that I think is good.
Okay. Is there if you're out to dinner, a friend is in similar business, they're about to be embarking on the same track. I'm not suggesting or not asking would you recommend Pingboard? The question really more is there anything about your process, the steps that you had taken to get where you are now? Is there anything you would have them do differently, advise they handle differently, or maybe, that could be anything from how they look for products to how they try to introduce it to the company once they thought they found it? Any advice that you would give to others that are on the same path that you already walked?
Yeah, I'll tell you the piece that probably I skipped because I liked it enough, and it again, I felt like it was a fit, and but the part that I skipped that I don't usually skip in my process, which I don't know if this is directly answering your question, but will work with me.
I'll take it.
Is I didn't put, again, I think his name was Mike, but I'm going to call him Mike even if it wasn't.
Sure.
But so this person may be named Mike. I didn't. Whereas with most of the other decisions we make on software, it's always like, okay, so help me build a presentation that I can, so that when I'm making my compelling case, I don't have to, I'm not building from scratch. I assume that they have that based on everything else in a pretty good form. I never made the ask of that, but I think that part of, I'm a big fan of the compelling case, and to that it makes it easier for people to say yes, and because I made it so easy I already said yes before I talked to Mike. I don't know the quality of all those materials, but I think that in general, when somebody's making a decision, part of the decision is it's can you sell it to your team, and it's great that you believe in it and all that, but I think that's important, and that's a piece that I skipped. Didn't ask for, but in terms of other people's processes, if somebody wanted to tell me how they go about making a decision, that okay, great. And I like my way. I've used it. It's worked for me for a long time. So I don't know.
Well, part of what we're trying to do here, John, is to be able to build up how we are interacting with others that are just like you, that kind of fit our sense of a perfect or ideal user for Pingboard. And so there's a reason why when I reached out to Cameron to ask, are there customers that you think would be advantageous for me to speak to? I think it's because you're representative of again, maybe not exactly apples to apples across every line, but you are absolutely sort of a perfect example of who it is we're trying to reach. So again, helping me get into your headspace helps us kind of reverse engineer how we should be presenting things. So along those lines, and again, they never get to see this video. Are there any criticisms or things that you think could be different, should be different with either the experience, the product, anything like that?
No, and again, I honestly, if there's a big problem, I haven't lived in Pingboard enough to know it, but I haven't come across anything. I like it. It's crisp, it's clean, it really does fit what we need, and so far so good. I'll tell you two other sort of related things though, if you'd like to know.
Please.
On the positive side of life, on things that other companies, on people that we've adapted to that have been meaningful in their approach, and one of them is with Recruity, which we ended up using for our recruiting software. And one of the things that they did and continue to always do is and they're in Amsterdam, but they still just communicate regularly when they need to. They're easy to get a hold of when there's a problem. I haven't had to ask anybody for anything from Pingboard yet, so I don't know if they're easy to deal with or not. But it's so important to just be able to have a quick chat with somebody. That's all. And then with Lattice, who we use for performance management software, one of the things they've done very well is they changed something I didn't like a bit, and so I'm pretty happy to voice my opinion on such things. And so just in communicating with them, and that they be very, and again, they're smaller organizations. I get it that they're still on the upswing too. So some of the things that they do now, maybe they won't be able to do when they scale out in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But the first thing they did, they're like, well, let's get you. Do you want to talk to the CEO? I'm like, well, does he have time to talk to me? I guess. And again, it was just the fact that he took 10 minutes to talk to me, and the conversation, he's like, oh, well, that's great. He's like, I got to tell you though, you're in the minority on this one, so we're not changing it. I'm like, that's fair.
Well, but look, to have to be able to speak truth to power at their organization and have that honest conversation, that speaks wonders to how they think of their customers and kind of keeping it all front and center.
So I think those things I think those things matter. In terms of the negative side, again, if somebody's worst experience I've had through any of the vendors we use on the HR side of life, Glassdoor. And you know what it was? They were great through the sales process, but the moment you needed to call them and ask them a question after you were a customer, zippo.
Yeah, you get crickets or the automated voice, right?
Yeah, and so when they sent me the same email template 3 times on 3 different questions. I'm just like, okay, hello, at least make some new templates. And but again, they're like, hey, it's time to renew. I'm like, well, you're not in our budget this year. There wasn't a single person interested in spending money with you this year based on this past year. I'm like, you have no one here to call. No one's on your side. I don't know what to tell you. So again, because I don't have those experiences with Pingboard, those are at least some experiences I've had with some other organizations.
Well, John, I can't thank you enough for your time, for your candor. Certainly, this is going to help a lot in terms of, again, building that mosaic of who it is that we think is a good fit for Pingboard, and then how we can kind of help them adjust their messaging and how they're presenting things to make it a more positive experience for everybody. So along those lines, I give you my deep thanks. My wish for an expedient Friday and a quick weekend for you.
Please.
All right. Well, thank you again, John. Thanks so much for all your time and shifting this around. And again, I share the thanks on behalf of Pingboard as well.
Awesome. Rock on.
All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Bye.